You have streaming media. Yeah. You want to send to you?
I think like the live stream is up. So are we good to start a couple of minutes early?
Wait, it's just 2:30. Yeah.
I mean, it says meeting is being live streamed. I guess we can just wait till 2:30 just in case it's not live streamed.
He's sick, so. Wait, I'll need.
All right. Are we good to start?
Is it being live streamed? Yeah, I see the corner thing. Yeah, we're good.
All right. I will send the doc.
Let me
All right.
download
Are you
it.
guys good? Say it again.
Let me download it.
Yeah, give me a sec.
Okay, we're good.
All right. Gabe and Catherine, you good? Okay. Political research and theorization must first begin with the process of normativity. A, resolvability. Anything else forces the judge to arbitrarily decide between impacts based on their personal biases, inviting prejudice to intervention. Comparing frame of solves by giving us an objective metric for evaluation. B, explanatory power. Moral frames are more persuasive and heighten moral conviction. Non-moral frames make us more extreme. Branch 2. Attitudes and moral conditions significantly more moral as non-moral frames increase certainty and extremity do not have a significant effect on important centrality on moral frames reduce strength and moral conviction. Moral conviction unique emission of attitude strength. C, semantics 10 and 12. Verbs like should or ought are associated with normative statement because they ask about obligation for agents. That inherently makes the resolution a question of normative ethics. Thus, the roles of the judge and the ballot are to determine the truth or falsity of the resolution. Prefer 1, jurisdiction. And PF, the judge is considerably bound to truth testing. Hand in 12. A resolution occurs on the concept of in vitro appeals by perform every act in the round not to permit the judge to determine the truth of the resolution. 2, bindingness. Every argument asserts its own truth in the process of justification, and it must be written as it is true that X3 in Truth and X3 dictionaries define affirm as to say something as true. That's Cambridge Dictionary, Oxford Learner's Dictionary, and Dictionary.com. And 3 dictionaries define the gate as to deny the truth. That's words that's used legal in the free dictionaries. 4, isomorphism. The true false is a binary decision calculus that coheres with the mandatory binary decision of voting app or neg. Ethical theories begin with the process of normative epistemology. One, motivation or belief in a particular statement is determined by the strength of our epistemic reason to believe it. Since the epistemic soundness of our argument determines their truth value. Thus, only statements we have a strong epistemic base for can motivate us to believe and follow through on them. 2, justification. Every theory requires an understanding of how we acquire the knowledge that leads us to a belief that it is true. All justifications for arguments appeal to an epistemological principle in which we refer In order to claim that statement is true, all principles are subject to change based on experience of this principles. Conclusive judgments about principles cannot be made. West no date. Experience is a matter of doing sufferings, trials, and tests of ourselves, optical, which confront us with stimuli variation in progress, and knowing must be described as discovering. That demands a constant interrogation and experimentation with our moral principles, since only a procedure that allows for the constant testing and revision of ideas can allow for moral progress. Anderson 05. Value judgments are provisional with an idea or revising them, and consequences are not found valuable. Acting on value judgments supplies data for confirming and disconfirming, and change requires us to revisit our original appraisal with an idea or modifying them and due consequences. The standard for evaluating offense is consistency with the refinement methodological constraint on ethics. Prefer, if we experimented with an ethical theory and conceive of a conclusion we found repugnant, we'd revise and refine the theory until it came to a functional conclusion. Impact health. One, procedural violations of the framework come before substantive, often because it determines the subject's ability to approach ethics pragmatically in the first place. Two, reject prospective consequences. A, culpability to account for all impacts of his action because agents may become morally culpable for all actions in the states of affairs, not just those that factor into the will. B, normativity. X action is good if it has a 99% chance of being pleasurable, but if the 1% occurs, X action is bad. That contradiction proves the framework non-normative, since absent 100% certainty, we can never justify doing something good versus bad in all instances. C, induction. It's circular to justify induction with the previous examples, since that presupposes induction is true. D, humans empirically lack of predictions. That's solid 22. We're overly optimistic things will happen the way we will actually happen. When we get new information that's into what we already believe to be true, we're bad at synthesizing data, bad at understanding statistical trend telling. Economists are notoriously terrible at predicting a recession. We rely on guts to make decisions without knowing which factors are more important. Offense. Should and ought claims are linguistically atemporal. Ginsburg 20. In completing 68, 57, I followed directions I previously gave myself that determined I should say 120 if the meaning of the expression tells me what I have to do in the future to ought to conform to that meaning without any implication that I justify the claim I'm conforming to the idea might as well just be put atemporally determines what I ought to do to arrive at normativity. That's a double bind. Either A, the affirmative defends a universal law that we should limit extraction which extends atemporally into the future and thus procedurally violates the standard by preventing the possibility of experimenting, or B, they don't defend a universal law, in which case they cannot generate a normative rule under view. Framework responses must be made in second constructive. One, else we execute 9 to 5 responding in both ACs justify shifting as where you dump in the 2AC. Two, framework arguments are proactive reasons to prefer one side of the resolution, which make them constructive arguments. Reading framework and rebuttal justifies reading an entirely new case and resetting debate. Three, else we can't generate stable offense in the 2NC because they could just vote it with a 10-second framework response, which expands permissibly negates to believe a proposition P as true. You need positive justification, otherwise you'd be forced to accept that P and not P are true. I have time. I'll read more permissibility stuff. Probability that there are infinitely more scenarios in which a claim could be false, but only one where it's true. You can only prove a statement true in one way, but there are infinite ways to disprove it. For instance, I can say a pen is red, but the only way for me to prove it that claim is true, the pen must be red. But I can prove it false by saying it's any other color.
Can you send that?
Yeah. Do you want it on the doc, or it's just an analytic? Can I just send it in the chat if it's easier?
Like sure, yeah. Let me know when you send it, by the way.
Yeah.
Uh, okay. Please a bit of prep. Hold on. Time starts. Okay, I'll send it. That was 30 seconds. Let's see. What did I name the doc again? Hold on. Oh, okay. It should be in there. Real good. Okay.
We get new responses. Q is inevitable to speech chance when new responses are key to education and testing. Rebuttal is the second constructive, which means that the argument isn't coherent. Second, 2 and 3 restart is inevitable. In their world too, by dumping on offense, which is probably worse because at least you get outs and preempts and rebuttal for framing, but there's no way to predict the contention level offense. And also 10-second framework responses are also inevitable as first constructed 2. No reason why that's bad. Now, contention 1 is Africa recent expert controls underscore China's leverage and 10 child 25. China's Africa controls severely limit production advances in new minds understood reality by a decade fractures and no signs of being able to jump as our thousands of engineers from scratch cause billions in Polka. Beijing hinder U.S. security. Turn deal signal continued dominance. 10/25. Beijing messaging reveals confidence emphasizing containment futility. Beijing view relationship from position strength with vulnerability understress temporary nature failure to resolve. Dependency of all unstrong underdeveloped. The off solves force to China withdraw from Africa, allowing U.S. fill in. Nature 25. Trump critical minerals help mine companies. The assurance will be undercut by China. Came to do business. He'll had to propose alienating China. Hope have to show owners of mining to give U.S. fill in is quick. 25. African fast solution. U.S. minerals need still 30% leaders welcome the opportunity. U.S. could acquire existing mines, upgrade and operate them. Processing in Africa negotiated as part of package. China is the only barrier to involvement. Sitting control collapses readiness. 25. Chinese state-linked companies need to secure barriers controlling stakes mines. Taxes are loose, giving priority access deals negotiated in secret. Possible U.S. compete. Process manipulation and flooding series of competitors trying to restrict exports after tariffs causing immediate destruction of manufacturing U.S. investing not matches speed is where Stalin CIB vulnerable to disrupt 95% from China dominant center ability to respond to invasion Taiwan. Deterrence depends on minerals. 25. Deter China depend on mineral and its mental component. Econ security and for modern defense U.S. may produce a limiting risk amplified by current vulnerabilities. Weakness guarantees war brand 25 order and through failure deterrence U.S. order preventing great power aggression and institutional cooperation with British power China Russia Iran challenging system they view dangerous and issue multiple interlocking threat preparing for war is imminent war risk nuclear escalation broken U.S. military might struggle directly must change. Cut the next card. Great power war cause extinction clear 25. Great power war see nukes battle up its AWS new tech actions escalate potentially cause fight negotiating nukes will use the famine cause winter or reducing resilience to reach extinction work invent elements you can't predict. Now, Util. The Standards Act and Institute Utilitarianism experience towards the basic hedonism, submersing Hababa 22. Phenomenological introspection is the only way to a reliable way form of moral beliefs. Involving reflecting experience of foreign beliefs about what they're like when we reflect on picture, we conclude it's good and pain is bad. Other beliefs are arrived through intuitions where those are unreliable. However, intersection is being who form reliable beliefs about their mental states are fairer than ones who can't. We shouldn't abandon it. We should abandon belief because the beliefs expect that pleasure is good and pain is bad. It's hijacks all their offense. Reasons why we should deliberate because this is the reason why through deliberation we see that util is good, that proves pain and pleasure are intrinsic value and disvalue anything else. Classes to regress and cancel moral disagreement. Grade 15. You got tribes with different values to resolve trade. You have to have some complementary utils and partiality as social decision makers. We should regard everyone interested as equal. What matters for everyone is happiness. You start with anything, you start with value and keep asking why. You ultimately come down to the quality of experience, pleasure and pain and good standard for resolving difficult disagreement. Is really the best overall experience. Reject Kalkind's essential limit theory. Theorem the bell curve cell removes outliers. Birch Brown 14. Statistical theory gives optimism over predicting consequences. Essential limit theory is something as the result of vast numbers influence will follow the bell curve of the consequences. Created by influence is not mean distribution, unpredictable variety of influences all pattern. To emerge not assume we are clueless because of influences. B is self-reflexivity, which research improving since the 2000s. Old studies are on 2019. Pragmatic prediction based on critique and technical research understand why past research is wrong and prove it. A number of factors that lead to prediction and stray rejecting this problem. Make pragmatic prediction achievable. Cut the card there. Their next aren't specific to the so you should reject freaking claims. Scap. Scap proves absence of conflict is impossible, so use modesty, otherwise kill fail education because every unseen assumption based on previous philosophy try. Paradox of extinction permissibility doesn't exist, always worse often in comparative worlds and useful. No, Scap is wrong, one something fitting of nothing truth, neither is Scap. Second, morally Republican, if you can't atrocity like slavery, that's a voting issue for making it be unsafe. Third, Pascal's wager, there's no downside to doing the opposite is right. But there's a huge downside can unconsciously get ambulance to suffering if they're wrong. Next is fictionalism, they agree the resolution is during moral actually cut that one. I'll just go to Scap proper. Culpability solved by only being responsible where you affect normativity is wrong. Even if you're wrong, letting that action would still be justified. Temporality is wrong. We don't say that is the math thing is good past present, but because we do say each time through math that something being true does now doesn't intrinsically mean it must be true in the future. So this is incoherent. We don't need to prove the plan is normative true. Always just our framing is either way. The plan is normative. The alpha is always true on util unless they prove it this at the always, which also capture should means even at summer 2094 should means at the present time to know immediate effectively. They say there's other ways to prove things solved. They have to say one, otherwise the advantage obviously always.
Can you mark it?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
No. Yeah. Okay. It's I'm good for cross.
Let me open it real quick. Sure. I'll take first question.
Okay.
Let's talk about util. If your framework were given a situation where you could enslave one subset of the population in order to avert extinction, what would your framework say we should do?
Well, util only matters in real world context, so it obviously never happened. So that's not a logical indite to util. Like util only applies.
I'm asking, okay, so your framework can't prescribe action if it's not probable.
No, it can't prescribe action in hypotheticals that will never happen because obviously you cannot solve
Wait, hold on.
extinction.
There is definitely a non-zero probability that that can happen. Like
No,
nothing is zero
So
probability.
you're saying slavery solves extinction? That's pretty bad.
I'm not saying that. I'm asking
You
that
just said
if
that.
that is what your framework justifies.
Well, no, I said that's never gonna happen. You said that it might happen, so I'm confused.
I'm saying the for probability that that happens is not non-zero, is not zero.
No, it's zero. Slavery is
Like
bad.
says, yeah, obviously slavery is bad, but that doesn't prevent bad people from doing bad things.
Well, slavery cannot solve extinction. That's pretty simple. That's a good question. Skep, can you explain the linguistics
We
like temporality
wait,
stuff?
I think you messed up like big time because we just did not read Sket.
Yes, it is. Your whole argument is that util cannot generate a moral obligation, which triggers skepticism.
No, we read a pragmatism framework.
Well, yeah, but that like the reason why it would negate the AF is because that util cannot generate this obligation, i.e., it will trigger skepticism.
No,
I'm
wait,
asking about
okay,
the skep
Colin,
trigger.
Colin, Colin. You just have misunderstood our neg. The offense from our neg comes from the double bind. It is saying that either A, you are affirming atemporally declaring that we should always limit our experimentation with things like natural resources, or you are not affirming atemporally and you are just saying we should do it in this instance, which is not normative.
That's just words, right? Like, yes, some like doing the AF now is good. I'm confused why that means like we should always do it later in the future.
Because should claims are either atemporal or non-normative.
Why? Why?
I mean, that's the Ginsburg evidence.
Can you
It says
explain it?
like sure, like it gives the example of computing 68 plus 57. We deductively follow directions that we previously gave ourselves.
Yeah,
And
I'm
those
confused why that means that the AF must be either normative or it must be either always true or not normative because
was
Matt,
two
that's
plus
not
two,
math.
did 2 plus 2 equals 4 a million years ago?
Not what? Yeah, like I'm confused.
And will it equal 4 a million years into the future?
Yeah, but that's not because of past experiences or past determination. It's
No,
because
it is
it existed
because
over
of
time.
the deductive nature of how math works.
So why
Do
does
you
that mean
agree?
that the AF must be either like always true or not
Because
normative?
we have made an indite on the linguistic, like how the word should functions.
Okay, like you just saying words, bro. Like, can you explain to me how like the number thing means that the AF must either always be
All right,
true?
okay, sure. I will explain the Ginsburg evidence for you. In computing 68 plus 57, we follow
No,
deductive
I don't
instructions
care about the number thing. Explain how it applies to the AF.
because the app is a statement just like 68 plus 57. The app is a statement and we are testing it.
Yeah, sure, that's cross.
Oh, we'll take some prep. Starting now. I'll stop at 110. Actually, a little bit more. That was an extra 15. US ending doc.
I just sent it. Sorry, I was muted. Let's see. Can I just get a thumbs up if you are good?
Wait, what's it called?
Round 3 con
Okay.
versus.
Okay, give me a second.
It's like the most recent one.
Wait, it's not working for me for some reason. Like, it's called the same name, right? Oh wait, hold on.
Yeah.
I think I got it now.
Yeah, I think the problem is we have to name these documents every time or it creates problems, guys. Because my computer is saying that they're the same name, so trying to override it.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want us to rename it something different?
No, I don't know. I don't know about the judges, but I think I should be fine.
Is everyone good? I can read. Okay, yeah. The order will be starting on util. A line by line their util, then on their calc indite stuff, then A2 skep, and then then A2 skep, then down their case. Then I'll make this clear. It'll be util, line by line, responses read on doc, then reject calc indites, then A2 skep, and then case offense. Okay, if that makes sense to everyone, I'll signpost. All right, cool. Starting on util. They've conceded the hijack built into case. Winning any objection or moral repugnant conclusion to the app means it collapses to my framework because we as humans revise and refine theories until they are functional in practice. So if you prove any objections or repugnant conclusions to util, then you vote on neg for pragmatism because you have to refine util to get a better ethical theory. The motivation standard on normativity also frames them out because it says that if a framework is not motivational, i.e. it cannot motivate you to be ethical in every action, then it is not normative. So again, if we win any reason why their framework is not normative, then you auto vote neg because we have the only normatively justified framework. Now, they say that experience forms the basis for hedonism. This begs the question of the is-ought gap. Just because we have experiences does not mean that they are intrinsically good and does not mean that we should get an ethic. They say pain and pleasure are intrinsic. The experience machine disproves that. If humans were only guided by pleasure, we would choose to be plugged into an infinite pleasure machine. But most people value truth, agency, authentic experience, etc. And people aren't only motivated by pleasure, i.e. quitting addiction requires going through months of withdrawal. But people do it anyways because being addicted, even though being addicted means continuous pleasure. And again, the is-ought gap should also answer this. Our framework is the only thing that resolves regress because we can continue testing it until we get to the best ethical conclusion. Now, I'll read more rejections. 1, our future being infinite should zero the relative risk or relative value of every action under util, Tarnsy 23. Possible the future is infinite, containing infinite total value or disvalue. Our actions guaranteed to have an effect. Nothing can affect the sum of value for reject, the reason to reject the attitude they imply. The number of actions matter. The mere possibility of infinite future imply expected total value. Our actions infinite undefined. 2, interpersonality is irresolvable. Cleveland 02. Impossible to make interpersonal comparisons to know its extent of the pain or pleasure of specific situations beyond our ability effects are accomplished by projecting our own inward feeling cannot accurately depth of pain is cheat, and to act, you need to ensure the opportunity cost of continuing to predict outweighs that of acting on imperfect conditions. But to conclude that, you'd also need to calculate the opportunity cost, which is their calculations are infinite. For people with anhedonia can't feel pleasure. Brody 20, anhedonia is the ability to feel pleasure. It's a symptom of depression, which means that they cannot be motivated under their framework because they cannot feel pain and pleasure, etc. Which means they cannot act on your framework, so it's not normative. 5, the human guillotine. I already said this. Pain and pleasure, there's no basis for what is means what ought. Only our arguments solve it. 6, intuitions. No one would kill their mom to save 2 people, but that's precisely what util does, which means that you have to change it. And util negates. Bhattacharya 11. Happiness unattainable. We are all consumed by desires. Happiness is constant in fulfillment. All happiness is negative, never positive. As soon as we're satisfied, cease to exist positive feeling. Absence of suffering. 1,000 pleasure do not compensate for 1 pain. Suppose that a weapon destroy the human race. Use the weapon. Diminish suffering. Now go to calculates. They say it's the central limit theorem, but that relies on induction. Just because things happen in the past is not guaranteed that they'll happen in the future. But that's precisely what the central limit theorem does. They've also just straight dropped the biases shape predictions, which are inherently flawed. So even if models work, researchers are biased and will not conclude to accept them. Obviously, conflicting predictions happen, i.e., people predict the weather in different ways. But your bias is what happens, which means that none of your predictions are inherently accurate. Which is that you cannot have outcomes under this. Now, I'll do H2 skep. We did not read skep, so just hold them accountable. This we read pragmatism, which means that their offense is just not relevant. They say default to what's intuitive. Look, if we both lose, like even if that as happens, if we both lose frameworks, but otherwise just be tech over truth. They say culpability is solved by only being responsible, but you can't foresee consequences. There's no bright line to evaluating. See, they say normativity is wrong. There's no obligation to act absent a normative framework. They say 68 plus 57 through deduction. Yes, that's our argument. Deduction proves atemporality. They say you don't need to plan normatively true, but to prove something is true is to have a framework that requires what is good and bad, which only a normative framework does. They say the app is always true under util. No, obviously under different circumstances, the app would be different. They say should is immediate. Even if should is immediate, out analyzes the future. It says that it must be atemporal. So even if it means should immediately, it also means should at every point in time, which is the specific evidence that's just dropped. Now their case. But there's no fill-in politicization. U.S. involvement is too volatile and uncertain. Green 20. Washington starts will keep volatility by imposing tariffs, substituting domestic projects. Cut the criteria. No U.S.-China war. History proves. Rose 20. China and the U.S. avoid direct wars. History proves deterrence will hold U.S. made through the Cold War without flying Soviet Beijing. It will chronically unwilling to confront American military. Mao ordered troops to avoid U.S. troops. China back down in 1995. Also in March.
We'll wait for that.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. Wait, no, I already. Go with it. Yeah, it's up.
Let me download it.
Also, guys, Catherine did say to send analytics in your docs if you do have them, just FYI.
Yeah, I got it.
I did them off the flow though. It's not really a doc.
Okay, understood. But if you do have them, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Colin and I will take prep now. A minute plus however much we took originally. I guess at 140, 130.
Yeah, I think you're at 140.
Sure, yeah. Stand up.
What's the order?
Give me a second. I'll tell.
There you go.
My bad. Let me send it. Okay. It should be sent.
I see it.
Order is the Africa advantage, util, and then scat pragmatism, whatever you want to call it. Just call it that fine. Yeah.
Just look at the talk.
Yeah, I will. Um, let me know when everyone's ready. Is everyone good? Okay. Where's my here? Right. I'll take this yes. Africa, one, they say there's no US film, but one, this is status quo description. They dropped our evidence indicates the reason why the US cannot build now is China is doing market manipulation and pricing, which squeezes out competitors, which obviously that's all. And second, we say post as China's literally not in the region, which means always US is by default only in the region, even if they're not perfect, they're relatively still better, because China's just not there. The second thing they say is that no war does not assume this does not assume status quo changes. Our brand is fantastic. This is right now China's been more boldest than ever. Their evidence about Mao Zedong, which obviously not apply to Xi Jinping, who's more adventurous and wants to establish a new global order with his vision. And so second of all, they drop that even China is not bold. China is not bold to go to war. They directly bold other states, i.e. Russia, North Korea, Iran, to attack, which is the drop war fighting scenario. Okay, you tell. All right. One, they say any objection needs to collapse. This is incoherent because one, they're equally repugnant. Drop Paul's analysis indicates that they are their oral philosophy cannot condemn things like the Holocaust, but they say it's not. They say there's no objective experience, which means there's possibility that didn't happen. Second, we would say that this is it doesn't respond to the fact that it still works overall. Our argument is that introspection and dialogue has made it so we can discover that pleasure and pain is intrinsic, which is the call's response in the first one. The next thing they say is that it's a prior question and it's and there's like an infinite amount of experiences or whatever that's not responsive because our argument is that there's arguments that the people on that still seek more pleasure. Even some people are even people in momentary instances don't seek pleasure. On that on the long run they still seek more pleasure. And we would say that's proven by things where like we chase things that we like. I things that make people happy. If I like good food, I will eat good food. Even if people in the short term have like addiction withdrawals, in the long term they do it to make themselves more happy, which proves that pleasure is interesting. It also proves that they're doing with like the whole with like not doing drugs to make sure they don't have pain, which still proves it's intrinsic. It's intrinsic. Okay. Uh. Um, they say we would go to infinite pleasure machines, but that's we haven't made them yet. Our argument is that we would if we could. They say addiction proves a util. They say that they say that addiction proves no util, but they stop doing drugs because it will cause more pleasure in the future. They say it's infinite pleasure, but extinction prevents that. They say there's an opportunity to cause prediction, but that doesn't assume the states of infinite resources. Now the next thing they say is that we would kill our mom if for like util just like killing our mom. This obviously isn't true because they're in a situation where kill our mom to save two people that's incoherent. They say the system can't feel pleasure, but they drop the fact that still pain is intrinsic to those people, and also would say overall people can feel pleasure. They did in the past, which is irrelevant. Okay. They say, all right, util solves the alt. Wait, which one? Okay. Even if people with ademonia couldn't feel oppression, people around either stem would still feel bad. Oh, well. Okay. Okay. All right. Going on Scap now. Start on predictions. Predictions do work. They drop the research are getting better and better and working past those. They see research will not accept them, but also drop that. Wait, real quick. Sorry, not on that first. Response to negative util. That argument is incoherent. Life is in value pleasure when you create only on struggle head 16. Humans who cross themselves in further tell lack of purpose not imposed no well, which recognize absurd love joy be survived, accept our desire to not match love and unmistakable strategy that experience more important than everything that pursue the control absolute experience people can just revolt meaning join inherited pressure and use positive intel to maximize pleasure knowledge make count 18. Sacrifice util as limitation which was positive authority according util care by concern every association negative permissive harm and positive concern greater independent empathetic concern for generational policy associated with benefits negativity and associated harm. And we say three more uncertainty. We're not certain that their framework is the best framework contestation, but really we should be alive to deliver the best moral framework. Okay, now on step proper. Okay. Yeah, predictions do were solved by multiple viewpoints delivered, and also induction fails is wrong. Once to solve, we use them instead of logic to explain concepts like gravity. They haven't warned why we use inductive logic to explain the advantage. Two, deduction survives and induction only we can confirm a truth. It's deductive because they haven't challenged in the past. I presume all swans are black, which is proven by the first black swan. Three, deduction also searches the only reason we say that the triangles always have three sides. That's what it's always been. Four, but also they also rely on inductive presence, i.e., they rely on the speech act having meaning to communicate to the judge, and the ballot actually showing a W in tab room. And okay, the step triggers. They say you can't foresee consequences. This is certain our arguments prove that prediction above Saul on temporality. They drop that the frame means that only we need to prove util is normative, not the plan, which we have met. Either way, we meet the afterlaw. It's true to have reason why it's not true. Anything else, Colin? Oh, wait, yeah. Basically, they're equally as abhorrent, so that argument is incoherent. A risk of staying alive longer is better. Pleasure and pain is intrinsic, which is dropped evidence because of introspection. We know that pleasure is true, so it is true. Yeah, I did say that.
You go for a cross.
Really? Sure.
Can I take first question?
Sure.
Would you kill your mom to save two people?
I just respond to this. This just is a scenario that would never possibly happen. The argument calls
Wait,
been made.
100%
Wait, let me
this would
finish. Let me finish.
happen.
Let me finish. Well, I don't know what world you're living in, Eli, that your mom would die to save two people.
Well,
But
I
our
mean,
argument is that
obviously,
yeah, let me
people
finish.
sacrifice themselves,
Let me
etc.
finish.
Like,
Let me
okay,
finish. Also, like so no, the obvious would happen. Our argument only endorses true things, like not true things. Our argument endorses things that are a problem in the real world, and also second of all, that's irrelevant to our framework of utilitarianism. It's
wait,
just
no,
that by
because in order to
perception,
wait, but you've conceded that in order for a framework
I
to
don't
be
think I've
normative, it
conceded
has
that.
to prescribe action in every scenario. So if you wouldn't kill your mom in that scenario, then util is not prescribing you action.
I never, first of all, I never said anything. Second of all, that's not the argument we made. But I'll take a question now. Okay. Let's talk about in like induction fails. Um, don't you also rely? Well, you also rely on things like communication, being able to actually have convey meaning to the judges, right?
We've made claims about how induction in the context to ethics doesn't. I'll take a question.
Why? Why does it? Why is there a difference? You
Because
rely on past experiences to justify future ones. You believe that like speaking to people has conveyed meaning, so you believe that future speaking can convey meaning as well. That's why you're talking to me.
I don't like. Okay, sure. We'll concede
Okay.
induction works. We'll concede induction works. I'll take a
All right,
question.
sure. You can go ahead.
Let's talk about this warrant on like this opportunity cost. You say infinite regress. You said that the state has infinite resources. How is that possible?
What are you talking about?
On the infinite regress thing about like calculating the opportunity cost to act, you said states have infinite resources. Does the U.S.
Sure.
government have infinite resources?
Is like near infinite. Like the U.S. government can do pretty much whatever they want, prove anything like strikes in Venezuela. The argument that we made is not like a literal they have quote infinite resources, but they have enough to the point where you're arguing about regressive like regress is irrelevant.
All
Okay,
right, that's
I'll
fine.
take
You
the
can take a
question.
question.
Um, sure. Uh, let's talk about your PNP stuff.
Sure.
Um, can't you prove a pen is not not red by proving it's blue? Like if the pen is blue, it's not red, right?
That's precisely our argument. You can only prove something true one
You say
way
it's
for proving
not.
false. Well, yeah,
What do
you
you
can
mean?
prove it. You can prove the pen false or like not read an infinite amount of ways, which means it's more
Well,
probable a
you
statement
can
is
also
wrong than right.
wait. Why can't you prove things true a bunch of different ways as well? And also more ways to prove something wrong does not mean things are like true things are not
Yeah, no,
true.
but we've made it in the absence of offense, it's safer to presume. I'll take a question.
Uh,
If people with adenonia have an inability to feel pleasure, then
I
how can
am sure I respond to this.
what was the
Doesn't
response
respond to the
then?
fact that three things. One doesn't respond to the fact that pain is intrinsic. Two, that overall experiences may feel pleasure in the past. And also three, even if they can't feel depression or like sadness, their family around them would also feel really bad.
We have how much? Minute 30 probably. We'll take that now.
Yeah.
All right. That's our prep. First the toad. The order of my speech will be starting on our framework. Then it will be our offense, and then util. Can you keep highlighting util stuff? And on our framework, I'm gonna make one cross app from something that was read on util, but I'll signpost pretty clearly. They've conceded the semantic standard on normativity, which is that the word should in the resolution indicates that frameworks ought to be normatively justified in order to be valid in determining offense in the round. This is fully conceded, and this is double drop. So I don't care if they're going to win their framework on the flow. If they've conceded this card from the top of our constructive, the verbs like should in the resolution indicate that the framework must be normative. Util must be able to answer every ethical question which their framework cannot do. So if we win a single reason, at worst, that triggers permissibility, and at best, that just collapses to our framework, which I'll do the warranting on later. The first reason I will extend for why they aren't normative is the normativity standard on the impact health section. This was straight drop. You can't know whether an action is good or bad because the consequences cascade instantly, i.e. in one consequence is another consequence, but the initial consequence might have been good, but 10 consequences later, it might be bad. So you don't know whether the initial action was good or bad, and there's no bright line to determining when you evaluate something in time, meaning their framework cannot actually tell you what is good or bad in every situation. The next thing I will extend is the intuitions argument. You would not kill your mom to save two strangers. They say it's incoherent and it would never happen, but your framework should say that we should kill our mom to save two strangers. Brian literally couldn't answer this in the second cross. His cross was embarrassing on the question, and it is definitely possible. Would you let a kidnapper kill your mom so that you and your brother don't die? Either way, normativity is about frameworks being able to answer every ethical question, no matter the probability of it. So your framework cannot answer this question, meaning it cannot prescribe obligations. Both of those reasons are reasons why we are winning our framework, because you've conceded the 1 point I prefer additionally from the 1 and C, which is that we would revise our ethical frameworks until they work in practice if we find any objections or malfunctions to them. Now I will extend our framework. Moral frameworks must explain how we know its rules are true to be binding and generate obligations, because we only follow theories that we actually understand or believe in. If they go for this push that pleasure and pain are intrinsic, this should be terminal. Now these morals are subject to change based on how we experience them and how they work in practice. It means we should adopt a standard of experimenting with and refining ethics to test ideas that allow for the progress, be consistent with a refinement and methodological constraint. That negates Ginsburg warrants that should linguistically determine that claim applies forever. The double bind either one, the app normatively declares that X should be limited permanently, which prevents moral refinement and violates the standard, or two, it isn't atemporal and fails to generate normative obligation. They say we only need to prove the framework true, not the resolution, but you conceded that your framework isn't normative, and you can see that should claims are a priori, and we prove this deductively since deduction is true atemporally, i.e. through all of time. The resolution statement applies there too. Now you too. They say we can't condemn things like the Holocaust. No, that was responsive to Skep. We did not read Skep. The procedural versus substantive distinction definitely frames it out, because the Holocaust prevents victims from experimenting with ethics. They say introspection solves. Whoops, you just conceded our entire framework. Your framework would say that pain and pleasure are always good, but after introspection, we might not use this to a 100% extent, and we refine ethics until which proves our theory right. The last thing I will extend is that people with anhedonia can't. Oh yeah, predictions fail. I'll extend that predictions fail because there are inherent biases in the way that we predict things. They say researchers are like improving, but that doesn't respond to the fact that everyone inherently has biases and that means their self-interests will inherently obscure their decision making in the first place. That is terminal defense on the advantage.
My audio. We'll use prep.
Like five.
Say that again. How much prep do you have? How much prep do you have?
5 seconds.
5 seconds. Okay.
It'll be case, then top down, whatever the order they just gave us. Good. I'll assume you're good then. Extend Africa China's control over minerals direct deterrence. It allows China to cut off resources, key to economy, and modern defense capabilities, and bolding adversaries in hostile worldwide cause nuclear war. The tensions calculation and extinction BFM and the plan solves reducing China's international traction minerals, allowing U.S. to fill in and wrecking China's military, which depends on critical minerals. Either way, it was dropped. Now, Utah solves it is a gap in all of their offense about deliberation being good in the same way that I intuitively know something is yellow, even though I can't explain it to them. I associate pleasure with goodness, and it is something that desire. That's the same Hababu evidence, which solves all their offense because all their offense is reasons why we should be able to deliberate and go through based on experiences to determine whether something is good, which is exactly what phenomenological introspection is. It is based on experiences determining that pleasure is a good thing and pain is a bad thing, and we should do that, and we should minimize it by preventing extinction. Now, the responses they say, no, it concedes our theory. Sure, we'll concede that deliberating about ethics is good, but it does not matter because they've not implicated this a reason why should negate, but only we have given a reason. Introspecting, being able to solve all the offense is reasonable for us because it proves that all the offense is not intrinsic to Yuzo, so it's inevitable. But you know for a fact that pain and pleasure are the pain is a good thing and pleasure is a bad thing. I mean, flip that, whatever. Because they've conceded it. Now, and that stuff. They've heavily emphasized that things have to be normative, but it's irrelevant because I'll just win that util is normative. They say conflict consequences cascade, but they've dropped the states of like massive amounts of resources. Obviously, they know that they're able to have a very good gauge about what the consequences of action is. Either way, they've dropped from case that we should only be held culpable for what we could have predicted, which is a framing issue which is a framing issue on the culpability for util that they've dropped. They say that the intuition stuff. Remember that this does not occur in reality. They've only asserted that you could kill your mom to save your brothers, but util only works in the context of real world scenarios. Yes, it's normative, but it's only normative in the context of real scenarios, obviously, which also applies to the argument about slavery and extinction. Now, they say that morals are subject to change. That's our argument, but we've on but that's just a blanket statement. Even if this is true, they drop it in the context of util specifically. Pain and pleasure are all uniquely guiding guides of action because they're intrinsic to our being. They say experiments refine ethics once again, cross way above. That's exactly what util does. They say, I'll do the temporality stuff here. Their argument about temporality and normativity is about our framework, which is util, but not our offense. Our offense does not have to be permanently true. Obviously, util can always be true, but does not mean that the app is always a good idea. But either way, I'll just respond to this by conceding that the app is always a good idea. This does not trigger permissibility because they have not read a reason why our offense must always be true. Only our framework. Anything else? Let's see. Okay. They say you can't know if an action is good or bad because actions cascade, but we can still trace the results of action, i.e. if a government passes a policy to invade a country, we know deaths from the invasion or bad and the result from the invasion. Either way, they dropped responses from case. I guess I'll just make this very simple. They've just spammed analytic responses, spammed analytic skep triggers without explaining or implicating any of them. They've dropped like almost every single response to this. So you know that pleasure and pain are intrinsic based off of deliberation, which they say is good, which means we hijack all their framing stuff. And like none other objections are true because like they just dropped every single response. I don't know how they're gonna salvage this and file.
All right, you good for cross?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about this, like the cascade of consequences argument. If a recession happens, that's bad. But then if it creates some sort of economic conditions that allows for an even bigger like boom in the economy, would that initial action have been good or bad?
Well, it proves the recession is good. I'm confused.
Yeah, it seems like you just answered your question.
Okay, but then let's say after that another recession happens and it's bad.
Well,
Is it bad or good?
Wait, that has nothing to do with the initial recession.
Yeah.
Like if something caused something that's good, that's good. That's
Yeah.
pretty simple.
Okay, wait. Let's say X causes Y, Y is bad, but then that Y causes Z and Z is good. Is X good or bad?
Well, you just figure out which one matters most.
Yeah.
Based off of weighing.
What? No,
Like,
you concede.
if you vote F, it's like I don't know, and it kills like 50 people. But after that saves like 100 people. Then saving 100 people is good because
Yeah, okay. My point is that this cascade of consequences goes on forever. So how do you know whether
Well,
an action
it
is good or bad?
It
Why
just
doesn't it go on forever?
doesn't.
like you've just asserted that it does. First of all, like states are
Every
obviously-
consequence has another consequence.
What?
Why? Like how?
That's just how causality works.
Okay.
If I knock something over, that follows that.
If I drop my pen, what other consequences would it have besides?
Also, either way, you've dropped that you should only be held culpable for what you're able to predict,
Yeah.
which, you know, the advantage like is. I'll take a question now.
All right, sure.
Let's see. So why does introspection fail?
Wait,
That concedes the authority of
you're
Well, yeah, why does that matter?
Wait, okay, our argument is about introspect, like your framework says that things like pain and pleasure are always good and bad. Our argument is that through things like introspection, we might come to a conclusion that pain might not always be bad or pleasure might
Well,
not
no,
always be
because
good.
through introspection, we've come to the conclusion that it is
Yeah.
always like true.
But like again, with this scenario.
But I can't hear you.
Okay, I guess cross.
All right, with the scenario, like you
Right.
killing your mom, right? Obviously, you cannot answer this question, which is why it requires having
That's because
introspection
util
about
only
that.
works in the context of real
Also,
scenarios that would happen.
This
Okay,
could be
hold on,
unreal.
hold on. This is a really damning concession to make in Grand Cross because if you conceded that
This is not a
normativity in
concession.
no, okay, if frameworks
Util
must
is
if
normative
util
in
can
real life. That is
if
not real life.
util can only answer like non-hypotheticals, then you've conceded that normativity must be able to answer
Well,
every
no,
ethical question regardless of how
It
probable.
must be able to answer every ethical question that,
applies to the real
well,
world.
yeah.
Otherwise,
What?
it's irrelevant.
Well, then it's not normative because then it cannot prescribe action in every scenario.
Yes, it can, because action only matters in the real world, which
what
util solves.
exists in like the parallel universe?
Okay, sure. Yes.
So you just agree?
Okay.
Wait, no. I mean, I still agree with what I said. I don't. Okay, that's basically
okay.
cross.
Sure.
Do we have? I'll start. Order is roll the ballot. Let me think. Roll the ballot, normativity, offense. Everyone ready? What do you good? Roll the ballot to determine the truth or falsity of the resolution through a normatively justified framework. They drop the semantic warrant that says that should indicate that it has to be normatively justified, i.e., it has to be able to motivate action in every single scenario. So if we win one objection to util that collapses to our framework, because we need to test that framework and keep refining it in order to be, which is precisely the thesis of pragmatism, which is just dropped. They read it, they tagged it as skep because they obviously did not know our arguments. Now I will extend should, the word should semantically indicate that frameworks have to be normative. So I will just win reasons why their framework is not normative. Look, they just dropped that consequence as cascade and changed the initial value of the action, i.e., if someone said something was good, but then it had a bad consequence, even though you could not predict the bad consequence, then the action would be bad in the first place, which disproves the fact that util can prescribe something as good all over the place. They say that we can predict actions, we can trace the results. Look, it is damning because they have to drop the biases shape prediction, which means that predictions fundamentally fail because people are biased and can't actually do accurate prediction, which is terminal defense because we cannot predict the consequence of an action, which means that util is not normative because we cannot accurately predict anything, which means that we cannot accurately prescribe actions, which is just damning to their argument. The intuition argument is also a TKO because they've conceded they cannot prescribe actions, i.e., when kill your mom to save two people, etc. They say it doesn't work in reality and only works in context of real world scenarios. As Rahul was saying, this is a TKO because it means that it cannot answer every single ethical question, which means that it is fundamentally not normative and thus cannot grant them offense. Now, both of the reasons are why we are winning. That their framework just collapses to pragmatism. I will extend the offense now. Ginsburg indicates that the word should linguistically determines the claim applies forever. The double bind is either abnormally declares that X should be limited permanently, which prevents moral refinement, or it's not atemporal, which doesn't generate a normative obligation. They just say the app is always a good idea. They conceded it is a violation of our standard because we're limiting extraction, which fundamentally means we cannot test. They've also conceded that permissibility goes neg because absent a positive justification, then you go to neg. They say introspection is solved. You've conceded that pain and pleasure is always, you could declare that pain and pleasure is always good. The only basis for ethics is our framework. That introspection and interpretation, we've come to the conclusion that pain isn't always bad and pleasure isn't always good, etc. Which is the killing your mom. You wouldn't kill your mom to save two people, which proves that we have to test, which is the process explanation, which is dropped. But if there is an obligation, you just put neg on presumption or permissibility.
We'll take our last 5 seconds. Okay. Africa, util. Is everyone good? Cool. Again, Africa withdraw. China's control over middle Brexit turns allows China to cut off resources that keep the economy and modern defense capabilities of bullying adversaries in the hotspots of the world, causing nuclear war, intensive calculation, and extinction for fan. The plan solves by reducing China's extraction of minerals, allowing them to use the fill and breaking China's military, which depends on minerals. At this point, this debate is not that complicated. All we have to win is that Util solves all their offenses, the sequence of questions, and you just auto check out. The only thing they've actually done is the two responses, but I'll get that later. So the risk of Util being true and accounting for this philosophy just means you just vote for us here. Util solved is Awty and all their offense in the same way that I'm telling you know something is yellow, even though I can't explain it somewhere. I associate pleasure with goodness, and that's just something I desire. That's not a show of evidence. They say that you have to deliberate, but this was our whole point. We agree. Deliberation is a good thing, but that deliberation through that, you will always come to the conclusion that pain is bad and pleasure is good. Proving you to. They don't punctually explain how you come to a different conclusion. Remember, when you're writing up your balance, you can articulate why you possibly come up with a different conclusion under their framework, or why it's relevant in the first place. You just auto out there. You know that bad things, you know that pleasure is derived from good things and pain is derived from bad things. So you know that it's intrinsic. Now they say predictions fail, but the state solves biases. They have a lot of resources and multiple different points with counters biases and just accurate prediction. This was called explicit response summary. They just drop. This also takes out consequence cascading arguments, so we can break all consequences. Independently, have also dropped the scientists are proving their biases every day. Either do better scientific methodology to correct against bias and change things archetypally predictable. Either way, it doesn't cascade. Drop the frame issue that people are only responsible for they predict what happened, not things down the line. And remember, we can trace the result of actions, i.e., if governments pass policies to make countries real the deaths from the invasion were bad and the result of that invasion. Now, they say man, you want to kill your mom to chase strangers. This argument is incompute and not properly implicated. Remember, they're not per reality. It's only certain you would kill your mom to save your brothers, which isn't happen, which doesn't actually occur now. They say it means you can't answer every ethical set question. Remember, Colin told you ethical questions only apply in reality, i.e., the way we discuss and apply ethics are grounded in real world scenarios. That's the only reason why we deliberate over ethics in the first place to prove or realities at all. They say temporality means app is normative. This is incoherent based on Colin's response. There are some frameworks must be normative, which util is, not that offense is. Yes, util is always true, but doesn't mean that the plan must always be true as well. Look, easy to vote is on the fact that our advantage drop and util is true. If you can't explain them their philosophy back to RFD, you shouldn't vote for it.
Good round, guys.
Good debate.
Good
Thank you
round.
guys for judging.
Good luck.
Thank you for judging.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Bye.
Look.